On this video, we talk about reoccurring relationship patterns and how to work with them. Stay tuned. Welcome to the New Love Addiction. I'm Alan Robarge, a relationship coach and a psychotherapist. Have you ever looked at your adult relationships and had an aha moment where it just appears that you're recreating the same kind of relationships that you had with your parents or that you had in your family, and that you take on the same role of how you behaved in your family and you show up like that in your adult relationship? Well, if you have noticed this and if you have done this, you are not alone. Many of us do this. And at face value, a simple explanation is that our brain is wired to create the type of relationships that we are familiar with. And the word familiar here means of family. So we're just repeating the same type of family relationships that we had, and we do that because it's comfortable, and that's how it reinforces core beliefs. It reinforces a skill set to say, well, this is how you create relationship. This is how I learned to be in relationship when growing up with my family, with my parents, with my mother, with my father, with my other extended relatives. And so it makes sense that that whole ideology, that whole way of being, that whole way of showing up is how I'm going to be in relationship as an adult. Now, as you can imagine, the challenge here is that we don't always learn the most functional, healthy, secure ways of connecting in relationship, the most intentional, conscious ways of being in relationship, or maybe even the most kind or loving ways to be in relationship. So if in fact we learned some skills, and I put skills in air quotes there, if we learn some skills that are more on the dysfunctional side, toxic side, abusive side, unhelpful, not very kind, codependent, maybe even hurtful, we will transfer those skills. We will take those, both the good with the bad, the full range of our skill set as far as being in a relationship, and we bring that to the table. We bring that to our partner, and we use what is available to us. Now, here's the thing. Most of us do this unconsciously. We don't fully question, well, where is this coming from? Why do I relate this way? Most often, the reason why we don't question is because it's so ingrained in who we are. It's so ingrained into our outlook and perspective that we assume that it's truth. That to have lived, 14 years, 18 years, 25 years in your family system, and especially in those very early developmental years, the very important years of your childhood, we create a world, a map in our mind that helps us orient and says, well, this is how the world is. This is how I relate in relationship. This is how other people respond and relate in relationship. I bring to this relationship a set of expectations and assumptions, and the person that I'm relating to also brings to the table a set of expectations and assumptions. And then also, just as a quick side note here, it's this conflict of unconscious or unidentified assumptions and expectations that often create so much discord, dissonance, and conflict in relationships, because we're bumping up against the other person's expectations and assumptions, and we're bumping up our own expectations and assumptions, not questioning if they're actually viable or apply to who we are now as an adult. So many of the assumptions and expectations that we learned were handed down to us or given to us at a very early age, and were interpreted through our immature child mind. However, we take those immature and that child's mind's interpretation of how to be in relationship, and we apply it to our current experience, our current age, our current adult functioning, when in fact the foundation, the core beliefs that have built this foundation of how to relate is very immature, or it's channeled and made sense of from the point of view of a child, because we were a child at the time in which we were handed the set of rules as far as how to be in relationship. Now, most families do not question their expectations and assumptions of relationship. Most families, when they have Sunday dinner, when they gather for holidays, it's somewhat uncommon, at least I'm assuming uncommon. If you know of other families that do this, then please introduce me to them. I'd love to experience this. But most families do not announce to fellow family members and say, hey, let's review our assumptions and expectations about how we're relating with each other. Let's take some time to look at if there are some toxic, dysfunctional, unhealthy patterns and ways of relating, and let's brainstorm and negotiate, is it possible to shift the history, the collective sort of the power of this collective history and how it dictates how we're supposed to be and stay in relationship. Most families do not do this. Included in this, most families do not have any type of communication in place where a family member can say, hey, this is not working for me, or I realize I want to change how we are relating. Most dysfunctional systems and unconscious, unthinking systems and rules of relating do not include a feedback loop where the system itself can grow and mature and change and evolve and improve. Any type of growth, change, improvement is based upon some individual person's contribution, and it's a kind of just trickle-down theory, or it will plant seeds and over time people will improve their relating. Or it could just be the opposite. If people are planting seeds of more dysfunction, planting seeds of poor communication, planting seeds of confusion and not being emotionally open and connected with each other, you're going to eventually get more of the same. So we come from a family, the way our brain works, the way this mapping, we just inherit, we soak up from the environment these assumptions and expectations and a system of relating, a system of how we're going to be in relationship as an adult. And then when we start to enter relationship, we could have a number of relationships in our early years, assume, our 20s. And at some point, you're going to notice a pattern. And if you're a thinking person, you're going to step back and really have an aha moment, as in, okay, this is really sort of bizarre. How is it that I'm in relationship with my mother? How is it that the partner I've chosen, I'm in relationship with my father? How is it that the same conflicts, the same dilemmas, the same disappointments, the same gridlock that I've experienced in my family, how is it that is repeating itself in my adult relationship now? There's an inherent frustration in this. There's a kind of there's a sadness that comes with this realization, because most of us set out to do something different. Most of us set out to say, I don't want to recreate any type of dysfunction, disappointment, frustration, reoccurring sadness that came from or out of my history. If I'm going to be in a relationship today, I want it to be different and more mature, and I want it to be more conscious. And so many of us set out with this very good intentioned purpose to create healthier relationships. And within 6 months, within a year and a half, however much time passes, at some point we wake up and just say, oh no, it's happened. I'm in the same family system. Now, I want to point out there's different beliefs about why this happens. And I take a more simpler belief. I take a face value belief, because if we make it more complex and if we assign meaning to why this is happening, it could actually confuse us. And let me share with you what I mean when I say we assign meaning to this. There is a belief that says these reoccurring dilemmas and challenges that we experience in our adult relationship is intended to be a corrective experience for what did not happen in childhood, or it is intended to be a corrective experience to do over what actually happened that fell short, that was hurtful, that was maybe even abusive. And that there's this psychological drive, and for some people, they even cross over into spiritual language and say that it's a function of your soul, that your soul desires wholeness, and that it is this drive to have a corrective experience now that you're an adult with another person, and that you will even, again, from the spiritual point of view, seek out a partner who somehow holds a kind of spiritual complement. I'm thinking of the idea of a key. That you both hold a key where together you can unlock some healing and some experience that's going to be mutually beneficial for each other. These ideas are beautiful. These ideas are psychologically based. These ideas really assign meaning to a function of why the heck are we repeating these patterns. However, what I want to point out and safeguard against is that these ideas are not necessarily true or proven. We can't prove that they're not true, but you need to be aware that they are not actually there's no way to know if that is really the driving force of it. It assigns a heightened meaning and a heightened layer to bring an explanation of purpose of why am I repeating, or why do I keep repeating these patterns, and what is sort of the point or the outcome of having repeated these patterns. So the belief system, there's modalities of healing and couples counseling that come out of this idea that says, well, the idea is to integrate the new experience as a corrective one that overrides or undoes what originally happened in your family relationships. Again, these are beautiful ideas, and they can be helpful ideas to assign meaning to what happened. They could also be confusing and can confuse us. Many people then find themselves getting hooked and stuck into staying longer than necessary with a partner that is not good for them, because they have convinced themselves, due to this kind of thinking, that they must stay and learn some lesson. This could also tap into a kind of belief system that says everything happens for a reason. And if you believe everything happens for a reason, the mind can be very slippery in this place, because sometimes a function of denial is to make something meaningful that's not actually meaningful. So you could be minimizing the dysfunction and denying that you're not happy and you need to end this relationship by reworking the meaning to conclude that, well, you must stay here and continue to struggle because this, in fact, is a corrective experience that's helping you evolve, mature, and grow. And one day you will come to some culmination, you'll get through the struggle, and the reward will be yours. This is a dangerous way of thinking, and if you are someone watching this video who's stuck in relationship, and there are some people who've been in dead-end, stale, painful relationships where a person has lost him or herself in relationship for the last 2 years or 5 years, or maybe even 22 years. And one way that we keep this system going is we keep reminding ourselves that there has to be some kind of greater purpose that is affirming some type of growth, development, and maturity. As I said earlier, as I introduced this, I like a simpler idea, because to take a simpler approach, it creates a boundary and it safeguards against confusing ourselves as far as why, in fact, are these patterns repeating. So the simpler explanation is because it's a function of brain mapping and how the brain fires, and that we do what we know. And an example that I like to use has to do with cooking and recipes and family lessons that you learn about the kitchen. Most of us, when we are in an apartment on our own, when we live with someone, when we have roommates, when we have a partner that we live with, we just walk into the kitchen and we do what our family has done in the past. We of course have learned some new recipes, we have taken on some new ingredients, but there's some staple items, the foundational way that we peel a carrot, the way that we open a can with a can opener, the foundational way that we stir cake batter, if we use a whisk in our hand or if we use electric beaters. All of these choices oftentimes are non-choices. We're not actively thinking, why do I use an electric handheld mixer to make the cake batter? Most of us just do it because that's what our mother did. Most of us just do it because we saw that's what our sister did. Most of us just do it because when we went to a family holiday function and we went to our aunt's home, our aunt was in the kitchen making cake batter the same way that everyone in the family does this. So we're given these recipes, we're given these ways of behaving and relating to the ingredients and to the kitchen and to the food and to preparing the food. And out of it are these expectations and these assumptions. So I use this metaphor because relationships are the same way, that if we have had a certain amount of dysfunction and failed emotional connection in our family history, we most likely are going to have a tolerance where we seek out a partner who has the same level of non-emotional interacting, the inability to connect on a level of deeper emotional harmony, the way that we would want now as an adult, but we simply choose what happened or what was created in our family, the same way that we make the same type of recipes and we operate in the kitchen the same way we did growing up. It's very true of relationships. We do not need to assign another layer on top of that to say, well, there's some kind of purposeful driving force that wants me to culminate into some deeper integrated meaning of how I need to learn the lesson. It can be simpler than this. It's more of a product of saying we have a habitual mind, habituated thinking. We are creatures of habit, especially in our thought processes, where we essentially keep recycling the same ideas, the same way of thinking, the same way of orienting to a situation. And what happens when we are confronted with reoccurring suffering is we have an invitation to wake up. The pain, the discomfort, the disappointment that occurs in relationships that are not going well. These in fact are knocking on your door to say, hello, open the door. Hello, wake up. Hello, look in the mirror. That you're recreating the same thing that you had in your family because quite frankly or simply, it's just what you know. So how do you work with this in keeping of the theme of being simple? It's about staying aware and being questioning. And that means being curious. And so you can very lightly start to question. The reason I say lightly is that we don't want to be a detective here in a way where we're uptight about it. But we can begin to step back and look at these patterns and say, well, why do I have this expectation in a relationship? Why do I assume another person will not call me back easily? Why do I assume that it's my job to monitor if the other person is disappointed or not feeling good about our relating? Why have I managed to become so overly focused on whether or not the other person is initiating or reaching out to me on a regular basis? Where is this coming from? And many times we will be able to say, we can really question and say, I don't want to be in a relationship like this. I know I inherited this from my family. I know this is how my family continues to stay in relationship. And I know that for me to be in continued relationship with my family, that I have to, and I'm going to use this word, this phrase, I have to play the game. It's still a game in my family, or it's a system that I no longer believe or uphold or value that system, but it's the only way that we know how to relate. And if I want to maintain any type of continued connection, well, I guess I uphold perpetuating that same kind of system, even though I know that it's not fully satisfying and maybe even dysfunctional. And so that's what I mean by we play the game. But in our adult relationship, we can start to challenge ourselves to say, well, why do I do it this way? And again, back to the metaphor, the cooking metaphor, the recipe metaphor, the kitchen metaphor, we can begin to ask ourselves, why do I, make the bread this way? Why do I make this particular casserole with this set of ingredients? Why don't I mix it up and do it a little differently? Or we come back to personal preference. We come back to a stronger sense of self to say, well, what do I want? If this can be different, how is it going to be different as far as how do I show up? How do I state my needs differently? Where in my family, I didn't state those needs. I hope this is helpful. Overall, the point of this video is to begin to look at family patterns and how they reoccur in our adult relationships, and begin to then also question why you do or don't assign meaning to those patterns of, like, what's the purpose of having these patterns repeat themselves. Instead of, and again, this is my suggestion how to keep it simpler. Instead of trying to prove that there's some kind of greater mature lesson to learn as a corrective experience in the exchange as an adult, what we're looking at is, how do I focus more on staying present to questioning, why am I making certain choices that I'm making? I hope this is helpful. Please check out this, subscribe to this YouTube channel if you want to check out more videos that are on the way. You could also join a Facebook group called The New Love Addiction. I will include the URL here if you want to join other like-minded people on Facebook who explore these and other types of ideas about relationships. And lastly, if you want to learn more about me, please do by going to alanrobarge.com. I do work remotely via phone, telephone, consultation sessions, and if this is something that interests you, you can learn more about that at alanrobarge.com. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.